The stellar harmony hung in space like a jewel, its hull reflecting light from a distant star. Inside, the ship buzzed with activity. Grace Martinez walked through the long corridors with a tablet in her hands, checking off names and numbers. She wore a gray uniform that looked practical rather than fancy. Her hair was tied back, and her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Grace was 42 years old and had traveled through the stars more times than she could count. She was smart and she was strong. But today, nobody seemed to notice these things about her. The stellar harmony was the home of the Galactic Council Summit. Beings from across the universe had come to this ship to talk about peace and trade and how to share the galaxy fairly. The aliens here were nothing like humans. Some had skin that looked like crystal. Some had too many arms. Some moved in ways that made no sense to human eyes. Grace was here as humanity's ambassador. She spoke for all the people on Earth. She had trained for years to do this job well. But when she walked through the corridors, most of the aliens did not see an ambassador. They saw something else. Administrator Kairos watched her pass by the main viewing window. He was Valorian, which meant he was tall and thin, with skin the color of dark metal. His eyes were large and black like pools of ink. The Valorians had been exploring space for thousands of years. They were smart and they were powerful. In Kairos's mind, this made them better than most other species. He saw Grace carrying her tablet and checking numbers. He saw her move quickly and know where she was going. He saw her simple uniform and her focused expression. His brain did not think hard about what this might mean. Instead, it made a quick decision. This woman was probably a worker on the ship. Maybe she prepared food in the cafeteria. Maybe she cleaned the rooms. Whatever her job was, it was not important. Kairos turned to the other Valorians standing near him. He made a comment in his own language about how humans were useful for menial tasks. The other Valorians made soft sounds that meant they agreed with him. They did not think about what they were saying. They just repeated what they had always believed about humans. Humans were new to space travel. Humans were not sophisticated. Humans could do simple work, but nothing more. Grace did not hear this comment. She walked past them without looking. She had places to go. The main conference room was waiting for her. The conference room was huge. The walls were made of a material that showed stars moving slowly on the surface. A long table sat in the middle of the room. Chairs surrounded it on every side. Each chair was different because each species needed different things to sit down comfortably. Some chairs had surfaces that moved. Some had temperature controls. One chair was just a column of energy held in place by invisible forces. Grace took her seat at the main table. She was not at the side. She was not in the back. She was at the center, in the place where the most important people sat. She opened her tablet and prepared her notes. She had spent months working on what she would say today. She had studied every agreement. She understood every number. She knew what humanity needed and what humanity could offer. The conference room filled up. The Crystalline Collective sent 3 representatives who looked like they were made of glass. The Shivara delegation arrived in their purple robes. The Valorians walked in with their usual confidence. Other species came too. Some had names that humans could not pronounce. Some looked like creatures from Earth. Some looked like nothing that had ever existed on any planet. Kairos saw Grace sitting at the main table. For just a moment, his mind made an adjustment. He realized she was not a worker. But this did not really change how he thought about her. If anything, it made him feel uncomfortable. How could a member of such an undeveloped species sit at the center table? How could humans think they were important enough for this? The first session began. The leader of the council, an old crystalline being named Observer Prime, welcomed everyone. He spoke about peace and cooperation. He spoke about shared goals and fair trade. Then he asked each ambassador to share what their species wanted from this summit. When it was Grace's turn, she stood up. She spoke clearly and slowly so that the translation systems could keep up. She talked about Earth and the people who lived there. She talked about what humans could trade. She talked about the skills that humans had. She talked about how humans wanted to be friends with all the other species in the galaxy. She spoke well. Her words made sense. But as Grace spoke, most of the aliens in the room were not listening carefully. They were thinking about other things. Kairos was thinking about how strange it was that this young species thought it had anything valuable to offer. The crystalline delegates were thinking about how slow human thought must be. The Shura were thinking about how fragile humans looked. Nobody said that Grace was wrong. Nobody said that her ideas were bad. They just did not listen with full attention. They listened the way adults listen to children. They heard the words, but they did not believe that the words meant anything important. Grace sat back down. She had said everything she needed to say. Around the table, the other ambassadors nodded politely. Then they moved on to the next topic. And the topic after that. And the topic after that. The hours passed. The stellar harmony moved through space. On the planet Earth, thousands of miles away, people were sleeping and waking and living their normal lives. They did not know that their ambassador was sitting in a room where nobody really respected her. They did not know that their whole species was being measured and found to be less important than they truly were. Grace took notes and participated when she could. She made proposals that made good sense. She answered questions about human abilities and human desires. But every time she spoke, the response was the same: polite, distant, not really believing that this woman's words carried any real weight. Kairos watched her throughout the day. Part of him wanted to be respectful. He knew that humans had traveled to space. He knew that humans had built ships and had learned how to survive in the vacuum. These were not easy things. But his mind kept telling him that these achievements did not matter much. Humans were simply not advanced enough. Humans were simply not important enough. When the first day of the summit ended, Grace walked back to her quarters. Her feet were tired. Her back hurt from sitting in the human-modified chair for so many hours. She thought about the work she still had to do. She thought about the proposals she still needed to present. She thought about how much she wanted humanity to succeed in these negotiations. She did not know that in less than 1 week, everything would change. She did not know that the room would fall silent. She did not know that every alien on the stellar harmony would see her differently than they saw her today. For now, she was just a woman who was mistaken for a cafeteria worker. But the universe was about to learn that it had made a very big mistake. Grace Martinez lay in the medical bay of the stellar harmony. Her body was covered with special blankets that helped with the radiation sickness. Machines beeped around her. Tubes connected her to systems that cleaned her blood and helped her organs work. She had been unconscious for 3 days. Nobody knew if she would ever wake up. Outside her room, the stellar harmony had changed completely. The summit was still happening, but it was happening differently now. Every conversation that the ambassadors had included a question that had never been asked before. What would the human do? Kairos stood at the window of Grace's medical room. He could see her through the clear wall. She was small in the medical bed. Her skin was pale. Her breathing was slow and steady. He had stood in this spot for many hours. He was not supposed to be here. He had other duties. But he could not leave. A Shara nurse approached him. She told him that Grace's condition was improving. The radiation sickness was being managed. They did not think she would die, but she would be very sick for a long time. The nurse said this as if she was giving him important information, as if he cared about these medical details. And truthfully, he did care. More than he wanted to care. Kairos thought about what he had said to Grace. He had told her that humans would not sacrifice themselves. He had told her that humans were practical. He had said these things because he believed them. He had built an entire understanding of humans based on this belief. And he had been completely wrong. The Shara delegation was different now. Kalir had wept when he heard that Grace was going to survive. He had visited her room, and even though she was still unconscious, he had spoken to her. He had told her that his species would never forget what she had done. He had said things that Kairos could not understand fully because they were in the Shavara language. But Kairos could understand the tone. It was respect. It was honor. It was something close to worship. In the main conference room, the summit continued. But the conversations had changed. The Valorians proposed expanding trade with humanity. This was new. The Valorians had always said that humanity had nothing valuable to trade. Now they wanted more contact, more relationships, more human technology. The Crystalline Collective did something unusual. They deleted information about humans from their analysis, not because they wanted to forget, but because everything they had recorded was now incorrect. A species that would sacrifice one of its members for strangers could not be understood through the normal calculation of resources and benefits. The Crystalline needed new information before they could make proper assessments. The Shivara delegation spoke about forming a permanent alliance with humanity. They said that they owed their lives to Grace. They said they owed their futures to her choice. Kalir stood and said that humanity had shown them something that the galaxy had almost forgotten. He said that Grace had shown them what it meant to have honor, what it meant to truly care about others, what it meant to choose doing what was right over staying safe. Kairos listened to this speech, and something in his mind shifted. He had made a calculation his entire life. He had measured species by their technology, by their power, by their ability to survive and grow strong. But Kairos was beginning to understand that he had been measuring wrong. There was something else that mattered, something that could not be measured in ships or weapons or resources. When the summit broke for the evening, Kairos asked to visit the medical bay. The doctor said he could. They took him to Grace's room. She was awake now. Her eyes were open, but she looked tired. Very tired. KY, our OS did not know what to say. He stood in the room for a long moment. Then he spoke slowly. He said that he had made a mistake about humans. He said that he had believed humans were weak and simple. He said that he had measured them incorrectly. He said that he was sorry. Grace looked at him. Her voice was weak when she spoke. She told him that humans just do what seems right. She said that when a problem comes, humans try to fix it. She said that sometimes this costs them. Sometimes it hurts them. But humans do it anyway because people matter. Because life matters. Because 800 Shvara people had families and dreams and reasons to live. Kairos understood. Or at least, he was beginning to understand. Over the next week, Grace recovered slowly. The medical teams were amazed at how fast her body healed. Humans were tough, they discovered. Humans could recover from things that would destroy other species. Another Valorian discovery that was completely wrong. On the day that Grace was finally well enough to move around, the Galactic Council made an announcement. They were changing how they classified humanity. No longer would humans be marked as an emerging species with limited potential. Humans would be marked as a species with unknown potential. A species that was still surprising them. A species that had shown them something they had forgotten. The Crystalline representative recorded the moment. They said that when humanity was asked to choose between safety and sacrifice, they had chosen sacrifice. When they were asked to pay a price to save strangers, they had paid it. The Crystalline said that this information would be preserved forever. It would be taught to every new generation of their species. Kairos visited Grace again before the summit ended. He brought with him a formal recognition from the Valorian delegation. It was a thin metal disc engraved with the Valorian language. It said that the Valorians now understood that they had been wrong about humanity. It said that they would change how they treated humanity in the future. It said that they would measure humans not just by technology, but by courage, by compassion, by the ability to do what was right even when it cost them. Grace took the disc and held it carefully. Kairos told her that his species wanted to learn from humans. He wanted to understand how humans could do what they did. He wanted to understand where this willingness to sacrifice came from. Grace smiled. She said that humans just believed in each other. That was all. When people were part of your world, you protected them. When people needed help, you helped them. It was simple. It was natural. It was what humans had always done. Kairos realized that this simplicity was what made it so powerful. This was what made humanity different. Not complicated thoughts or advanced technology. Just the basic belief that other people mattered. That was the thing that would change the galaxy. The room fell silent. Not a silence of sound stopping, but a silence of understanding finally arriving. A silence of minds realizing that they had been wrong about everything. A silence of a galaxy understanding that it had been measuring the universe incorrectly for thousands of years. The alarm came without warning. Red lights filled every corridor of the stellar harmony. The sound was sharp and demanding, a noise that meant danger was coming. Grace was in her quarters, preparing for the second day of talks when the alarm reached her. She stood up immediately. Years of training made her body move even before her mind understood what was happening. The communication system came to life. A voice that was calm but urgent told all ambassadors to report to the emergency conference room immediately. Grace did not waste time with questions. She moved fast. The corridors of the ship were crowded with aliens running toward different places. Some were moving toward safety. Others were moving toward the problem. The emergency conference room was smaller than the main one. It had no beautiful star-covered walls. It had simple gray metal and screens that showed numbers and images. Kairos was already there when Grace arrived. So were Observer Prime and representatives from every delegation. Nobody sat down. This was not the kind of meeting where you took time to be comfortable. Observer Prime spoke first. A ship had appeared on the sensors. It was far away, but close enough to see. The ship was damaged. Very damaged. The hull had cracks that spread across it like broken glass. The systems were not working. The ship was losing power. Then came the important part. The ship belonged to the Shara. It was a colony ship carrying 800 people. The Shavara delegation had invited the colony to join the galactic community just 1 month ago. The people on that ship were excited. They were ready for a new life among the stars. And now their ship was dying. The Shavara ambassador, whose name was Kalair, made a sound that meant great pain. His skin changed color from purple to gray. The news was destroying him. Those 800 people were his responsibility. They were his family and his community. And now they were going to die. Kyro spoke quickly. He said that the Valorians had the technology to take the most valuable people off the ship. The colony's leaders. The ones with important skills. They could be saved. The others would be difficult to save. It would take too much time and too many resources. Better to save who they could save. The crystalline representative did not disagree. But they had a different idea. The ship had technology on it that was valuable. Information. Science. If the ship was going to be destroyed anyway, they should try to save the data. The knowledge was more important than the people, because the knowledge could benefit everyone in the galaxy. Kalair stood up. He said they would not abandon anyone. His voice was loud and angry. He told them that the Shivara would rescue their people. If the Galactic Council would not help, then the Shara would do it themselves. But the Shivara did not have the technology to save a dying ship. They all knew this. Kalir was speaking from emotion, not from logic. Then Kalir suggested something else. He suggested that they use force. Perhaps they could push the ship to a safer orbit. Perhaps they could make the decay slower. The Shivara leader said that they would send military ships. They would try to stop the ship from breaking apart through force. Observer Prime said that military action would likely break the ship faster. It would make the situation worse. Kairos agreed. The Valorians understood physics better than almost any species. If they pushed the ship, the damage would spread faster. The ship would break. Everyone would die. Everyone in the room could feel the problem. 800 people were going to die. Nobody had a good solution. The options were bad. Save the leaders, lose everyone else. Save the technology, lose the people. Try to save everyone and probably fail, causing more to die in the process. Then Grace spoke. Nobody had asked her. She was not the expert. But she had been listening carefully, and she saw something the others did not. She said that the ship had backup systems. Older ships always did. Backup power generators were always placed away from the main systems. If someone went into the ship manually, someone without the fear of the Valorians, without the strange needs of the crystalline, without the resources that the Shivara needed to spend on other things, they could restore the power. One person could go into the ship. One person could navigate through the damaged corridors. One person could find the backup generators. If they turned on the backup power, the ship's safety systems would work. The ship would be saved. Everyone would live, but there was a problem. The ship was filled with deadly radiation. The radiation came from the broken power systems. A person going into the ship would absorb enough radiation to cause serious damage to their body. They might die from this. Even if they did not die, they would be very sick for a very long time. Everyone looked at Grace. She was small for this task. She had no special Valorian training. She had no crystalline ability to process information in strange ways. She was just human. But she was offering to do something that nobody else would do. KY, our host, told her this was foolish. He said that humans were not built for this kind of sacrifice. He said that humans were practical. Humans took care of themselves first. Humans did not throw away their lives for strangers. Grace did not argue with him. She simply stood up. She looked at Observer Prime. She said that if he approved, she would go. She asked if there was a rescue suit available. There was. Every ship carried rescue suits for emergencies. The suits had radiation protection. The protection was not perfect, but it was strong enough for a short trip. Observer Prime said that she did not have to do this. He made it official. She was not required. This was her choice. Grace said she understood. She began to walk toward the door. She was going to do this thing. She was not waiting for more permission. She was not waiting for the others to tell her it was a good idea. Kalir called after her. He said he would send Shivara soldiers to help her. Grace said no. One person would be better. Fewer people exposed to radiation. Faster movement through the ship. She said she would go alone. The rescue suit was prepared in the docking bay. A human engineer helped Grace put it on. The suit was heavy. It covered her entire body. Through the faceplate, she could see the damaged Shivara ship growing larger as her rescue shuttle moved toward it. The suit's communication system was working. She could hear the team in the shuttle behind her. They were watching everything. They were ready to call her back if things became too dangerous. Grace did not think about danger. She thought about 800 people who were going to die. She thought about Kalir and his pain. She thought about the families on that ship who were waiting and hoping and praying to whatever gods they believed in. The shuttle docked with the broken ship. The hull door opened. Grace moved inside. The radiation levels were high, very high. Her suit's warning system started to scream. The numbers on her display kept getting worse. She moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were dark. Some sections had lost all power. She used lights from her suit to see. She moved fast. She did not hesitate. She did not question what she was doing. After 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, she found the backup generators. They were in a place the designers had hidden them, far from the main systems. Grace turned them on. The activation process was simple. Just 3 switches, 3 movements. And then lights came back to the ship. Systems started working. The ship began to save itself. Grace turned around and ran back toward the shuttle. Her suit was screaming warnings now. The radiation dose she had received was reaching dangerous levels. She did not care. She had accomplished the task. The ship would not die. The people would not die. She made it back to the shuttle. She made it back to the stellar harmony. And as she collapsed in the medical bay, the entire Galactic Council watched what had just happened. They watched a human go where no Valorian would go. They watched someone sacrifice for 800 strangers. They watched and they understood. They had made a mistake. A very big mistake. And that mistake was now lying unconscious in the medical bay. The medical bay on the stellar harmony was quiet. Grace Martinez opened her eyes after a long sleep. Her body felt heavy, but better. The radiation sickness was fading. The machines that had been connected to her were being removed one by one. The doctor said she would recover fully. It would take time, but she would be all right. When consciousness came fully to her, she saw that she was not alone. Standing at the foot of her bed was Kalir, the Shvara ambassador. His purple skin seemed to glow in the soft light of the medical bay. His eyes were wet. He was crying, though the tears looked like liquid silver. Kalir spoke in slow, clear English. He wanted Grace to understand every word. He told her that she had saved 800 people. He told her that those 800 people included doctors and teachers and builders and artists. He told her that those people had families who now lived. He told her that because of Grace, the future existed for his species in a way it did not exist before. He said more words. The words grew bigger and more important. He told Grace that she would be remembered forever by the Shivara. She would be taught to their children. Stories about her would be told for thousands of years. In Shivara culture, this was the highest honor. This was how they remembered the greatest heroes. Grace tried to speak, but her voice was weak. She told Kalir that she had not thought about it much. She said that the ship had a problem. She said that she could help fix the problem. She said that she had simply done what needed to be done. Kalir listened to these words. And somehow, these simple words were more powerful than a long speech would have been. Grace had risked everything and received nothing in return. She had taken no reward. She had asked for no payment. She had saved 800 lives because she believed it was right. Over the next 3 days, other ambassadors began to visit Grace. The crystalline representative came. They said that humanity showed patterns of behavior that had never been recorded before. The crystalline explained that they measured species by what they did when given a choice. Most species, when given a choice between safety and sacrifice, chose safety. But humanity had chosen differently. The representative explained that the crystalline collective had studied thousands of species. They had records going back millions of years. And in all that time, no species had shown this pattern of behavior as strongly as humans. When a human could help, they helped. When a human could sacrifice for strangers, they often did. This was not logical. This was not efficient. But it was consistent. The crystalline said they were restructuring how they thought about humanity. They would no longer treat humans as an undeveloped species. They would treat humans as the keepers of something the galaxy had lost. They would treat humans as the holders of an important truth. Other visitors came. Scientists from various species who wanted to study how humans thought. Traders who wanted to offer deals to humanity. Military leaders who wanted to understand human strategy. Everyone wanted something from humans now. Everyone wanted to understand this strange species that would die for strangers. The medical team said that Grace was well enough to leave the medical bay after 5 days of recovery. She was weak, but she could move around. She could breathe air without help. She could think clearly. When they told her she could leave, she asked them to help her stand. She wanted to walk out of the medical bay on her own as she moved through the corridors of the stellar harmony toward her quarters. Aliens from every delegation watched her pass. They did not whisper comments about her simple uniform anymore. They stood and watched with respect. Some pressed their hands against their chest, a gesture of honor from species that had no other way to show respect to a being so different from themselves. An invitation came to Grace's quarters. The invitation was from the Galactic Council. They wanted her to attend an important meeting. They wanted her to be in the main conference room at a specific time. Grace did not know what this meeting was about, but she prepared herself carefully. She showered. She put on her best uniform, the one she had been saving for official ceremonies. She walked to the conference room with slow steps because her body was still weak. When she entered the room, every being inside stood up. This was something that had never happened to a human before. The Valorians stood. The crystalline delegates stood. The Shvara stood. Representatives from 20 different species stood. And they all looked at Grace. Observer Prime, the crystalline leader who ran the council, spoke first. He said that the Galactic Council had made a decision. This decision was unanimous. For the first time in the Council's recorded history, a decision had been made with complete agreement from every delegation. The decision was about humanity. The Galactic Council voted to grant humanity full membership status in the Council. Not as a probationary member, not as an emerging species still learning the rules, but as a complete full member with all rights and responsibilities. Observer Prime explained what this meant. It meant that humanity would have a seat at every important discussion about the galaxy. It meant that human voices would be heard when decisions were made about peace and trade and the future of all species. It meant that humanity would be treated as equals with the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the universe. He said that this decision was made because of Grace Martinez. He said that her actions had shown the Council something important. Her actions had shown them that a species was not measured only by how much technology they had. A species was measured by what they did when it mattered. A species was measured by whether they would sacrifice themselves for others. Grace felt tears on her face. She had not expected this. She had done what she did because it was right, not because she wanted anything in return. But now the whole galaxy was saying that what she did had changed everything. Kyros came forward. He represented the Valorians. He gave Grace a medal. The medal was made of material the humans had never seen before. It was harder than diamond and lighter than air. It glowed with a soft blue light. The medal showed a human figure standing in front of a broken ship with light coming from the ship. It showed exactly what Grace had done. Then Kalir came forward. He gave Grace another recognition. This one was a crystal stone engraved with names. He explained that these were the names of the 800 Shvara who had been saved. He said that as long as this stone existed, the people would remember. And as long as people remembered, Grace would be remembered too. Other species came forward. Some gave objects. Some gave formal documents. Some simply bowed or made their own gestures of respect. Grace received all of this with a tired smile. She was still weak, still recovering. But she could see that something had fundamentally changed. When all the ceremonies were finished, Kairos came to speak with her privately. He told her that the Valorians had been wrong about humans. He told her that they had believed humans were simple and weak and practical in an ungenerous way. He told her that they were wrong. Grace told him something simple. She said that humans were just like anyone else. They wanted safety. They wanted happiness. They wanted good lives for themselves and their families. But humans also knew that some things were worth more than safety. Some things were worth more than happiness. Some things were worth more than life itself. She told him that protecting others and helping others and doing what was right, even when it hurt you, were those things. She said that all humans understood this in their hearts, even if they did not always act on it. Kairos listened to these words, and he understood that the Valorians had a lot to learn from humanity. They had a lot to learn about what made life worth living. 3 weeks after Grace had gone into the broken Javara ship, the summit of the Galactic Council came to an end. The conference room was filled with anticipation. Every decision that had been discussed was going to be put to a final vote. Proposals about trade, agreements about peace, discussions about how to divide resources fairly among all the species in the galaxy. But there was one more thing. One final vote. It was about humanity. Grace walked into the main conference room. She had recovered enough to move without the medical support. She was still tired. The radiation had weakened her body, but her mind was clear. Her spirit was strong. She walked slowly and carefully to the place that had been prepared for her, the place of honor. Every ambassador stood. This was not a surprise anymore. It had become tradition in these 3 weeks. Every time Grace entered a room, beings from every species stood in respect. They did not sit down until she sat down. Observer Prime called the meeting to order. The vote was about to happen. The vote was about whether humanity should be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. It was not a close vote. Every single delegation raised their hand in agreement. The Valorians, the Crystalline, the Havara, the Eon Merchants, the Cleth Warriors, the Seeker Scholars, 23 species, all voting the same way, all voting yes. The vote had been unanimous. No species disagreed. No species abstained. This had never happened before in the history of the Galactic Council. Observer Prime made an announcement. He said that humanity was now a full member of the Galactic Council. He said that humanity had earned this position through the actions of one human who showed the galaxy what it had forgotten. He said that Grace Martinez would be remembered by every species that existed. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything that had ever been performed before. Each species brought a gift, something valuable, something meaningful, something that represented their respect for humanity. The Valorians brought technology, the latest designs for ships that could travel faster than anything currently existing. They said this was a gift to help humanity explore the stars. The Crystalline brought knowledge, ancient information that they had preserved for millions of years, secrets about the universe that had been hidden. They said that humanity was now wise enough to understand these things. The Shivara brought honor. Kalir stood and recited the names of all 800 people that had been saved. He said each name slowly and clearly. He said that each one of those people now lived because of grace. He said that every descendant of those people, for all the generations to come, would know the name Grace Martinez. After all the gifts had been given, Kairos came to speak with Grace in front of everyone. He said something that surprised the other Valorians. He said that the Valorians had been wrong about humans. He said this in his own language and in the common language that all species could understand. He said that humans could not be measured by how much power they had. Humans could not be measured by how advanced their technology was. Humans had to be measured differently. Humans had to be measured by their courage, by their willingness to help others, by their belief that some things were worth more than life itself. Then Kairos did something that a Valorian had never done before. He bowed. It was a gesture of deep respect in his culture, a gesture that meant he considered another being to be greater than himself. He bowed to Grace Martinez, a human from a small planet called Earth. The other Valorians were shocked, but then they understood. They bowed too. After the ceremony was finished, there was a banquet. The ship had been prepared for this celebration. Long tables were filled with food that would be digestible for every species, drinks that would not poison anyone, music that came from different worlds mixed together into something beautiful. Beings from dozens of species came to speak with Grace. They asked her questions. They wanted to know about her childhood. They wanted to know about Earth. They wanted to know about human culture. They wanted to understand what made humans think the way they think. Grace sat at the place of honor at the center of the main table. On one side of her sat Collier. On the other side sat Kairos. Around the rest of the table sat ambassadors from every species that had come to the summit. She told them about Earth. She told them about the oceans and the mountains, and the animals that lived there. She told them about human history. She told them about the wars that humans had fought and the peace that humans had built. She told them about how humans had always believed that one person could change the world. When she told them that, an old crystalline ambassador asked her a question. The question was simple, but it carried weight. The crystalline asked, "Why do humans believe this?" Grace thought about the question. She thought about her childhood on Earth. She thought about the stories she had been told. She thought about the values that every human carried inside them. She answered, "Because it is true. One person can change everything. One person with courage can save 800 lives. One person with kindness can change how an entire galaxy thinks about things. One person who does what is right, no matter what it costs, can make the universe a better place." The room fell silent, not because voices stopped, but because understanding had arrived. Because every being in that room, from every species that had ever traveled the stars, understood something they had never understood before. They understood that humanity was not important because of power. They understood that humanity was not important because of resources. They understood that humanity was important because of what humans believed in. Because humans believed in each other. Because humans would die for strangers. Because humans thought that doing what was right was more important than staying safe. In the weeks that followed, Grace returned to Earth with stories to tell. The people of Earth learned that humanity had been accepted as full members of the Galactic Council. They learned that a human woman had saved 800 aliens. They learned that the galaxy was no longer going to underestimate them. But more importantly, they learned something about themselves. They learned that what they had always known in their hearts was true. That courage matters. That sacrifice matters. That helping others matters. That being human means believing in these things. On the stellar harmony, Kairos and Collier stood together watching the ship that carried Grace back toward Earth move away into space. Collier said to Kairos, "Your species said humans would never sacrifice themselves." Kairos nodded slowly. He said, "We were wrong about a great many things." And Collier said, "The galaxy will not make this mistake again. We will remember what we learned from Grace Martinez. We will remember that humans are not weak. We will remember that humans are not simple. And we will remember that humans are the keepers of something precious. The belief that some things are worth more than anything else." As the human ship disappeared into the stars, both ambassadors understood something important. The galaxy had changed forever. And it had changed because one human woman had walked into a broken ship and done what was right. No matter what it cost her. No matter what she had to sacrifice. She had done it because she was human. And that meant everything.